You need to kill your characters. You need to show your reader that there are clear life or death stakes. They need to know anyone could die, no matter who they grow attached to. If you write action, adventure, war, or hell, anything that can get even remotely dark, you may have heard this advice. I know I have, and as a writer who specializes in those kinds of stories, I'm increasingly annoyed by it. It's not bad advice, don't get me wrong. In fact, it's pretty good in a vacuum, but whenever I hear it, I feel like something is just missing. In general, the way we talk about stakes, particularly stakes introduced via character deaths, feels incomplete. So I'd just like you all to hear me out for a moment. Maybe, just maybe, you don't need to kill everyone? Let's say you're writing an adventure story where a party goes on a quest. Doesn't matter what the quest is, just imagine a group of fun little guys. Rotate the blorbos in your head, or don't if you have aphantasia. Now, you want stakes, right? Some might suggest killing off some of those goofy goobers, maybe a lot of them. Sure, the readers like them, but fuck the readers, and getting an emotional reaction out of them is ideal anyway, right? So let's say you just start throwing your characters into fights and have them die over and over again. Maybe you add in new characters every so often, and kill them too when their time is up. Maybe you do it so rapidly a character dies every few chapters or episodes. Maybe you get used to the killing. Maybe you grow deaf to the screams and numb to the pungent smell. Maybe you get put on a government watch list. Alright, take a step back. What exactly are you establishing here? That there are high stakes on this adventure, and that anyone could die? Sure. The thing is, though, it goes a little further than that. At this point, it's not just that anyone can die, it's that they do die, frequently, at a rate so fast it can create, well, multiple issues. First of all, it's hard for the audience to grow attached to characters who die soon, but, and this is crucial to consider, it's even harder for them to grow attached to characters who they've been primed to believe will die soon. A level of investment comes from wanting to see a character make it, and don't get me wrong, if you want to dash that hope after a point and really fuck with people, be my guest. The only thing is, that hope needs some time to thrive in the first place. Let's take an example of what I feel is a really well done character death. Up ahead will be spoilers for Jujutsu Kaisen, please skip if you care. Kento Nanami from JJK dies near the end of the Shibuya incident after he's had plenty of time in the story and been significantly fleshed out. I love pretty much everything about this character death, both in the setup and the execution. Nanami gets all the time in the world to shine earlier in the arc and elsewhere in the story, and that really hammers in the hope that he'll make it out of the meat grinder that is Shibuya alive. When he finally does die, it hits hard, and it sure as hell tells you in no uncertain terms that no one is safe from Gege Akutami's murderous tendencies. Especially because Nanami was his favorite character. That is raising the stakes done right. Now, I also want to bring up Nobara's death, or pseudo-death if you want to believe she's coming back like I do. Not just because it's much more contentious, but also because it leads well into my next point. Let's just say I have mixed feelings. It's well executed in a vacuum, and as unpopular of an opinion as it might be, I actually really like her flashback. It perfectly embodies the core of her character, and it certainly succeeds in tugging at my heartstrings. Rather, the dissatisfaction comes from her lack of focus in the arc up until her death. Nobara gets one fight where she fares horribly against a very narratively unimportant character, and then another brief fight where she actually does pretty well, only to get blitzed and incapacitated on the spot anyway. In general, I also don't think the potential of her character was explored to its fullest extent in the story, unlike with Nanami. It's hard to shake the feeling that this death was tacked on to raise the stakes even more, whether that's true or not. On the other hand, a defense I've seen of Nobara's death is that JJK, thematically, is in part a story of people dying while they still have much to give to the world. I don't really have a counter to that besides, yeah, but I don't have to always like that. And the counter would be, you're not supposed to, so the writing did its job. I have to admit, despite my complicated feelings, Nobara's death kind of does fit in JJK, or it would if she stays dead. That being said, this is where my next point comes in. You need to know what kind of story you're writing and what kind of stakes you want. Consequently, you'll know how and when you want your characters to die. Constant and semi-realistic deaths can be fine if your story isn't character-driven, especially if it's theme-driven like JJK is to an extent, and the theme specifically demands constant and semi-realistic character deaths. But that question of what drives your story has to come up when deciding your stakes. Stakes are not something you're supposed to sprinkle onto your story after you've already decided the core behind it. You don't come up with a foundation and then say, oh, what if I killed X, Y, or Z? Stakes are not seasoning, they're part of the meat. Going too far with character deaths to quote-unquote raise the stakes can also lead to an inverse problem with your story, because if almost every fight ends in a death, your audience is going to start predicting deaths. It'll be just as easy as predicting survivals in stories where very few people die. Speaking as someone who enjoys reading or watching as much as I enjoy writing, I can tell you that at least to me, a fight is most fun when you do not know what will happen, who will win or lose, or what the long-term consequences will be. I know I'm just one person, but this is psychology. Uncertainty creates tension. Tension creates drama. Drama creates an engaging narrative. Unless the outcome of a fight being predictable actively serves your story, you should at every possible opportunity force your audience to sit quietly and anticipate. Never give the people the answer until it's already over. The last thing I want to say is that stakes and death are not always the same. There are many stories where the stakes are high and many characters don't die, because in the truest sense, stakes are what the protagonist or protagonists have to lose. Breaking Bad, one of my favorite shows ever, has high stakes, but death often has very little to do with them. For most of the show, the tension in the audience isn't just there because Walter White could die in the meth business, but also because he could be caught by Hank, his reputation could be destroyed, and his family life could be shattered. All of these consequences have immense weight when they come true. Major characters don't even really start dying until Season 5, with the first truly big death being that of Gus at the end of Season 4. Major characters don't tend to die specifically to up the stakes either. Rather, they die primarily in service of important story beats or defining moments in arcs. I truly think that's the best way to do things, most of the time anyway. I believe an oversaturation of stories unwilling to kill characters for fear of alienating the audience is why many people want to see more deaths and conflate more deaths with inherently higher or better stakes. I'm sympathetic to this, even as someone who, in most of my stories, doesn't often like killing characters off for other reasons, such as wanting to continue using them and realizing their potential. I do think it's cheap when consequences are ostensibly non-existent, but I'm averse to the idea that constant deaths are a catch-all solution to that problem, especially when they would not work with the story in question. Personally, I'd love to see more stories that can establish clear stakes and follow through on that narrative element without needing to go the easy route of repeatedly killing likable characters. That way, an atmosphere of dread can be felt from every character who's alive, and when there is a death, it really lands. Maybe that doesn't work for everyone, and maybe the same is true of all of my advice, but that is my perspective. And I'm sharing it in the hopes not that people will obey it like a command, but rather just think about it and see if it works for them. I'll try and make that a consistent tenet of my channel going forward. If you did get something out of this, or if you have any other ideas, let me know in the comments. Hell, tell me about a character death you love, or one you hate. Believe me, this stuff is awesome to talk about. With that said, I think that'll be all for today, so this is Posey, signing off. Hey folks, if you're hearing this, you're at the end of the video. Congratulations! If you enjoyed, feel free to leave a like, subscribe, and check out my Patreon for perks like early access to videos, your name in my credits, and more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Uncertainty creates tension. Tension creates drama. Drama creates a tense narrative. Oh my god, that's such a fucking stupid writing issue. What? Drama creates a tense narrative. How the fuck was that in my script? How the fuck did I write that? Okay. We're fixing that.